We will begin as we wait for the others. My name is Lidigu. I'm a health and science journalist who also covers climate. And today we shall be discussing about breaking the silence. With me, I have a panel. I'll start with the guests that are there as we wait for the others. And before I go further, let me invite Esther, Minet, to officially welcome us because they have been gracious enough to host us again for this conversation, and also tell us what they offer in terms of making sure that we are mentally okay, and if they have any packages that you might be thinking about. So, Esther, please take the mic.
Thanks, Leo. How are you? Good evening, everyone. My name is Esther Bundi. I'm the Corporate Affairs Manager here at Minet. Such spaces give us an opportunity to, just share with our audiences, some of the capabilities we have as Minet. Today, we are just privileged to just have a candid discussion around the topics of mental health. We just fresh from observing the World Suicide Awareness Day. So we felt this conversation is very, very timely. So let's see what our speakers have to offer. And please feel very welcome. Karibuni sana. Back to you, Leo.
Thank you so much, Esther. So first, I wish to start with Edna. Edna, please welcome to the panel. I want you to start by telling us a bit about yourself, what you do, and why you're here today. I would really love to get to know you, and so would the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Lionel. Good evening, everybody. My name is Edna Grace Wendo Chawiyah Uchieng. I am a psychologist and a mental health advocate. What I do support people who are struggling with mental health. I consult with, but then I also run an organization called Tabasamu Resource Center, which is a mental health and wellness center. And I am basically here to add value in any way I can with the knowledge that I have in line with mental health. I look forward to a very engaged discussion. I'd encourage you to ask us because I always knowledge is, well, they say knowledge is power, but I also say what you can name, you can tame. What you cannot name, you really cannot tame, and it can affect your life for years without you. So I really do enjoy such spaces. Thank you so much, Lionel.
Thank you so much, Edna. And Edna, just to start with you, perhaps someone might be on the space and they're wondering, what is mental? Would you define it for us? How do we know that someone is mentally unwell?
Okay, thank you. Those are two questions in one. So I hope I am able to cover both. First and foremost, what is mental health or what is being mentally healthy? That's what I hear from that question. So basically, when we are looking at mental health, if we were to look at the World Health Organization's definition of it, and even pointers that tell us what mental health truly is, we look at how well are you coping with your day-to-day stresses. And day-to-day stresses are many. They include traffic, managing the cost of living, dealing with the relationships we are in, being able to raise your family, if at all you're a family person, being able to just meet the obligations that you do on any given day. How well are you doing that? So your ability to cope with those day-to-day stresses would point towards mental health or being mentally well. Okay. The other thing we look at is your ability to work productively. When we look at productivity, people sometimes don't realize that human beings have a natural need to increase, to expand ourselves, to have more, to claim more. So meaning we have a natural need to be productive, to have things sprouting from our hands and things becoming better than they were before. So we can look at just working productively. It's not normal for you to be at the same level from beginning of the year to the end of the year. Like if you have performance targets, it's not normal for you to be at 0% the whole year. Ideally, if you're able to be productive in the work that you do, go to work, you're able to handle the responsibilities that are given to you because you got that job because you qualified for it, for example, then that would point towards you being mentally well. Something else we look at is how well are you interacting with people in your space. And the people you interact with could be people at home, but people in the workplace as well. I like using the example, when you get home, do people come towards you or do they run away from you? When you get to the office, are people happy to engage with or they'd rather avoid you? In whichever space that you are in, how well are you interacting with? Because positive interactions are pointers towards mental health. Sometimes we say, I am an introvert, I don't necessarily associate with people. But then again, you're not an island. You're a human being, and human beings are born to be social. Maybe not excessively social like extroverts would, but all of us need someone in our space. So how well are you able to interact with your space? Are you a toxic person, or do you constantly, what kind of person are you? I take back that responsibility. That would be a point towards being mentally well. Another thing we look at is your ability to realize your potential. Do you know your worth? Do you know how good you are? Do you know how capable you are? When you look at yourself, do you see a loser? Do you see a person who has the ability to think? Do you see, sometimes we expect even our bosses to be the ones who see how competent. Are you aware of your own competence? You expect a partner or a spouse to see how beautiful or how handsome you are. Are you aware of your own beauty or your own handsomeness? It starts with you, really. So your ability to realize your own potential would also be another pointer towards being mentally well. I hope that explains it. Yeah, so that's how I would define mental health, by breaking down the definition given to us by W. And those are some of the things that would tell us whether you're mentally well. How then do you know that you're not well? You look at 3 areas mainly, or 4 areas we would say. First, how are you thinking? What kind of thoughts are in your mind? Are they negative thoughts? I'm a loser. I'll never make it. This life is, I'll never mount. No one loves me. Those are examples of thoughts, okay? That could point towards something not being right. Is your concentration affected? Is your memory affected? What could be going on? In terms of feeling, are you experiencing excessive negative feelings? You're constantly sad, annoyed, irritated, worried, possibly angry with the people in your space. Those could be signs that you're not well in terms of feeling. Then in terms of behavior, are you isolating yourself from everybody? Are you unable to cope with the people around you? Etc. Those would be some of the things that would tell us whether you're mentally well or not. Then another thing we look at is how well are you taking care of yourself in terms of grooming, in terms of well-being, in terms of even just eating right, sleeping right, exercising where you need, and all that. I hope I have answered that, Lionel, to the best of my ability. That's how I would define mental health and what not being mentally well look like. Thank you so much.
I think Leo has become a listener instead of a speaker again. Leo,
Oh,
would you
okay.
mind sending us a request for us to respond?
Okay. As he does that, maybe I can just
Yes.
highlight something else
Uh-huh.
around mental well-being.
Uh-huh.
The thing about mental well-being is that it's very dynamic. Sometimes we think, how do I know that something has changed? By the way, we have to safeguard our mental well-being every single day of our lives, by the minute even. It's very dynamic because it can change from one minute to the next, from one day to the next, from 1 week to the next, 1 month to the next, 1 year to the next. And we cannot predict everything that will come to us that may affect our mental health or mental wellness. So because of you don't know whether you'll experience a loss, you don't know whether you will lose your job, you don't know whether you will lose a loved one, you don't know what will happen. We don't know. So we live in a world where we constantly don't know what's coming at us. And everything that comes at us has the ability to alter our mental health. So for those reasons, then we have to all be very proactive in how we handle that. It's so dynamic, can affect us regardless of age, regardless of stage of life, regardless of social economic status, whoever we are, we can all be affected. We are all vulnerable for being impacted in terms of
Very
Is it back?
true, Edna. No, it's okay. Can take
Okay.
over as he plans to join back. I think we can go to the next speaker that we have on call. John, how are you? Mind turning back your speaker on?
Hey Esther, how are you? Can you
I'm
hear me?
very well. Yes, yes. Welcome to our Twitter space.
Thank you very much.
Kindly introduce yourself to our lovely audience. Let us know what you do.
Okay, my name is John Jiro, and I'm the co-founder of Kitisawa. So Kitisawa is a platform seeks to see how mental health can become affordable, accessible, and has tailored care for individuals who are in need. Because at the moment, mental health care is a little bit costly on the higher side, and it's not accessible to majority of Kenyans, despite the fact that 1 in every 4 Kenyans have ever had an outcome on mental health. And you can find this in various journals. Now, how do we do this? We are trying to narrow data gap. And that's where we found the problem is there is not enough data in the country to come up with mental health solutions that can reach to every segment of the community. So by narrowing that data gap and working with respective institutions such as insurance companies, banks, SACCOs, because they have the widest reach of humanities across the country, we can be able to bridge this gap.
Okay.
Thank you, Esther.
No worries, John. Thank you so much for introducing your lovely organization to us. And last but not least, speaker online, we have Rachel. Rachel, are you with us?
Hey everyone, yes I am.
Please introduce yourself and what you do.
Okay, my name is Rachel Kenya. I am many things in one. I am an administrator, I am a lecturer, and I am about to be a practicing psychologist. So I have a very huge passion for mental health. And I like to talk to people or interact with people on matters mental health, because as we can see, we have a lot of mental health issues, especially with the young generation. For somebody that works in a university, we see it all the time. We see people who start their first year when they're in good health, and then they just crumble, and then somehow they just lose track of things. They don't make it to the finishing line or to the graduation. It becomes a whole situation of them. So I work with young people a lot as we try to navigate mental health and mental wellness, because basically your emotional state, your psychological state, your social state, all in one affect who you really are as a person. So when these states are shaken, or when you're not in a good state, then at the end of it all, you cannot become the student you want to be, the teacher you want to be, the mother you want to be. So all of these things affect our day-to-day lives. And as a result, we need to focus a lot on our health mentally, because at the end of the day, if mentally you feel like you're not in a good place, you might realize it or you might not. You will end up transferring the same pain to other people, knowingly or unknowingly. So if you're a mother, for example, and you are maybe very stressed, and it might not be of your own making, of course. I mean, the economy is stressful as it is, and very many other things. So you will transfer that energy to your children without knowing it. You might not even yell at them, but they can always feel it. They can always, they always respond to that. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to interact with you and learn more about mental health, and also disseminate the information that I also have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I think our audience can already start piecing what the expectation of this Twitter space is going to be all about. With mental health, there are some topics when you start broaching, it's a bit sensitive, but what you want to do is really create a mood for it in itself. So we've had a bit about, what mental health is, how to recognize some signs and symptoms when you're not okay. But now we're going to really delve into the manifestations of what happens if your level of mental health is being subjected to some adversity. So Edna, as you were doing a bit of catch up in the morning, you mentioned some two key distinctions, something about self-injury, symptoms, and then the ultimate when someone contemplates suicide. Will you manage to give us just some sights on this, as now we piece now together the conversation of how you're breaking barriers between age groups when trying to talk about this, and also how we can start democratizing mental health. That's where John will come in. So Edna.
Okay, I'm happy to respond to that. Now, when human beings have a need for balance, I should say that human beings have a need for balance. So when you feel anxious, you want to do something to restore balance, basically to dilute that anxiety you're feeling and take you back to a state that you regard as possibly normal or something you feel you can control better. Now, when our mental health is affected, one of the things that I think in line with the focus of this month, some of the things that people end up doing is turning against yourself. So we have two versions. We have non-fatal self-injury and fatal self-injury. Okay, non-fatal self-injury and fatal self-injury. Those are two examples of ways that people hurt themselves. So fatal self-injury in most cases would then mean going all the way and actually committing suicide, isn't it? That's fatal self-injury. And I'd like to believe if we have a chance, we'll talk about what are some of the ways that people do that. But then again, we also have non-fatal self-injury, which I believe is the focus of what you're asking. And
Yes.
thank you. And these are everyday things that people do that sometimes we think are mild, might not be very dangerous and all that. Examples of non-fatal are things like cutting yourself. There are people who cut themselves when they're in a lot of pain, they're feeling very anxious, they're feeling excessively sad. You'll find them, or they're feeling pain, you'll find them cutting themselves. And people don't understand, why would you cut yourself to deal with pain? There are times when people will scratch themselves. Sometimes people use things to scratch themselves. Sometimes even like a fence. I don't know a name. We have this fence that is pointed that has spikes. Why am I chain link? Exactly. Chain link. Yes. So you'll find someone scratching themselves with chain link. Sometimes people grow long nails, so they scratch themselves to cope with the pain that they are feeling within themselves. Then sometimes people also burn themselves. You'll notice someone light a matchstick, and put it under their hands just to burn themselves, because it gives them some form of relief within that particular place, or in the space that they may be in. Sometimes people also carve words or symbols on themselves, just and these look painful because you carve words and you're actually carving words and you're bleeding as you're carving those words. Sometimes people also hit themselves. You'll find someone hitting their heads against the wall. This is something we might even see with children. You might find someone punching the wall, punching themselves, punching something, or even banging themselves, or even just hitting themselves with something. Like I know people who hit themselves with a whip. So you'll find marks on their back. They use sticks or whips to hit themselves when they are feeling pain. Then there are people who also pierce their skin with sharp objects. That also happens. Like you find someone with rings everywhere and all that. And sometimes we don't understand. I'm not saying everyone who has rings everywhere has an issue. I'm just saying sometimes those are things we do to injure ourselves because of the pain we are feeling inside ourselves. And then something else is inserting objects under your skin, like a pin, inserting a pin under your skin, trying to insert a needle, sometimes even it's called what? Nail, So people do so many things to do that. And you know what they're dealing with? They're dealing with they're trying to cope with emotional pain or intense anger or even frustration, and most of us don't understand why anybody would do that. So those are some of the things that I can think about top of my head. While they do that, it gives them a sense of calm and helps them release tension. And sometimes, in most cases, it will be followed with feelings of guilt and shame, and then the painful emotions come back. So it's like being stuck in a revolving door, where you're trying to deal with the pain, and your way of dealing with the pain, you come back to the pain again. And it's very intense. Definitely self-injury, if not dealt with at the right time, can ultimately lead to somebody participating in something fatal like suicide. Okay, thank you. I hope I've answered that.
So Lionel,
Thank you so
going to hand the mic back to you.
Thank you. I'm sorry technology happened on me today, but I'm glad to be back. Thank you
No
so
worries.
much, Esther.
Yes, I don't know.
So, I've been listening in.
Did you manage to hear? Okay, yes.
Yes. So I wish to talk to Rachel. Rachel, are you on?
Hey, Leon. Yes, I am.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm all right.
I hope your day was fine. Now, I was just listening to Edna talk about young people and what patients are doing to themselves. And then, if you remember yesterday, NACADA released a very interesting report on how young people are consuming drugs and other illicit substances around the country. And
Yeah.
an expert was telling me this morning how most of those people who consume those end up in our mental health facilities. As a lecturer who talks to young people and teaches them every day, and you
Yeah.
get into the head as a psychologist, what are they thinking?
Basically, with drug abuse, it's usually as a result of trying to numb pain. So you are in pain, emotional pain, and you are looking for a way to numb that pain. So that is how people try to sample drugs, and then they settle on a drug of their choice. When they settle on a drug of their choice, now that is where addiction now comes in, because now they have found a drug that is able to numb the pain that they feel. Then within no time, it becomes a free fall. So if it is alcohol, they take alcohol today, the pain they were feeling, they feel a little bit better than tomorrow, and then the dosage increases, and they keep going on and on until it becomes now a whole addiction. Now, dealing with young people sometimes is a whole roller coaster of emotions, because you look at these people and they are where you were once, and you cannot understand everybody's pain, of course, but you know some of the issues that they're dealing with. Some of these people are coming from very different backgrounds, very broken families sometimes, and this is the time for them to understand and have some self-awareness about who they are and try to navigate through life. So at that time, it can become very challenging for young people, and you find that addiction cases, especially in centers of learning for that particular age group, are very high. I cannot say the number of students that we have that are stuck in addiction. Like, the numbers are so high. Weed has become like food in universities. It has become so normalized. It is painful to watch, because at first, maybe it starts as a joke, as you sample drugs and you try to be cool, and as you try to, transition from teenagehood to adulthood, and you sample these drugs, and then somehow you just stuck. You find somebody who's not able to, sample and realize, maybe I don't like this, this is not nice for me. So they get stuck in addiction. So when it comes to young people, there's really a lot for you to actually understand what these people are going through. Some people may be doing it for fun, but in most cases, it's usually to numb pain. Addiction generally, that is what it is about. And then we also have a little bit of a toxic culture, especially with social media. So you find, due to lack of sometimes community, you have just been plucked from your home, and now you're here in this place where you feel like you're all by yourself and no one will understand you. Sometimes you do not know who to turn to or who to talk to. So you find that a lot of the people will just seek solace in drugs. And again, when you're trying to get community, what are the things that you should do? What are the things that most people do? Most people will engage in social drinking, social smoking, social whatever it is. So in the process, you find that people are becoming addicted as they try to socialize and fit in and get community. And then in the process, you find them being addicts as a result, which, sorry for using that term, but yes, that is what usually happens in most cases.
Now, Edna's been telling us how young people cut themselves as a result of these mental health issues they're trying to battle and end up ending in drugs to numb themselves. As psychologists, I would just love to understand, how did young people discover to do this? What triggers for someone to just start cutting themselves?
I do not think it is something that just started recently. I think it is not mental health and mental wellness is not a new concept per se. It has been there with us. It is just that people have not known that this is what it really is. People have given it different names in society. A long time ago, it was given bad names like madness and all of those things. So even with cutting and doing all of these things that inflict pain, they've been there. It's just that they were not as pronounced as they are now, and people did not know what they are. Some of them are also embedded in culture, so they did not look like they were mental health issues. So if you did them, you look like you accepted a certain culture, because we have cultures where you can You can do certain piercings to your mouth, some of which look very painful even after they heal, ears, all of these things. So in when such things are also found in culture, it is hard to identify and say, what, that doesn't look very mentally, okay. So these things have been there. They're not really extremely new. I just think that people are now more aware and they're able to recognize issues when they happen, and they're able to say, okay, when somebody is cutting themselves like that shows that they are not maybe mentally well. It shows that they're going through something significant enough to, for them to be feeling like that and doing and inflicting that kind of pain on themselves. So I think it has been there. It is just that it has been given very many words in different cultures and different communities. So I think it has been there, and it is just basically trying to suppress pain, because when like a child is in pain and they cannot be able to express whatever they are feeling, or whatever they want to express is not acceptable, then they suppress it. And when they're suppressing it, the only way for it to get out of their body sometimes is by hitting their heads. And they would want to scream, but screaming is maybe not acceptable in their household. So that is what they resort to. So people do things that they feel are acceptable. They have certain things that they feel, but they cannot act on those things. So they redirect that energy to something else, which could be things like a cutting. Yes.
Thank you so much. John, good evening. John, are you with us?
Yes, Leon. Thank you for this opportunity, and I'm glad to see you back.
Thank you so much. John, I can see one of my favorite columnists, Edna Grace is here, and he writes a lot about men. And I'm sure he's wondering, men rarely talk about they love suffering in silence. And since today is also about breaking the silence, how do we get men to break the silence on mental health? They suffer inside. Unaambiwa mwanaume ni kukaa ngumu, haufai kulia, haufai unajua kufanya vitu zingine zenye zitakaza udu. How do we break that chain and cycle?
Thank you, Leon. Men for a very long time have been put in a place of extreme responsibility, which sometimes has become a heavy yoke upon their shoulder, to the point that they crumble from the inside. And also, apart from the responsibility comes expectations. Now, the men of yesteryear are those who, let's say, are from the age of 65 going upwards. They were always full in control, and now they have been ushered into a world. The control is no longer there. They can no longer give directions. They are retiring, and let's say their wives have more flexibility and freedom to do what they can. So they are unable to grapple with that. And put in mind that growing up, they had a culture of not speaking out frustration and difficulty. So they boil it inside. And one of the greatest prevalent mental health can be found amongst these men. They are going through silence disease, where they cannot communicate. They can speak to their sons. They cannot talk to their grandchildren, and they can speak to their spouses. Now, for this age, the age between now and then, there has been equal difficulties, but that are different in terms of challenges. That is, we are in a world where men are increasingly have to fight alongside women for various roles and responsibilities, putting in mind that from the traditional way, they still were shown that they have to live in certain way, especially being head of the family. So that disturbances of reality and what is expected is bringing a lot of clash inside, and it's causing a lot of they want to speak, but they don't know who to speak to. So for the present generation, the problem is the outlet, the platform. Every time we hear, and this is always good messaging that is mental health space, that people should speak out. most often we don't know where they are going to speak out. Most important, most people usually say that you should speak to either your colleague or the people around you, or you just share. But sometimes when you share to the wrong audience, the situation can exacerbate. So one of the provinces that have tried so much, I can relate, is the religious and some corporate, where they have now come with events specifically targeted for the welfare of the men. So this can be chama kind of for men, where men can come together and have certain activities, let's say team building, hiking, barazas, and this these groups, they are not segmented, they are inclusive. There is an elder, there are people who are in the 40s, 50s, to let's say the teenagers, so that they can all incorporate themselves through speaking, through sharing, and coming up with ways in which people can heal out. So possibly I can say that.
Yeah. Thank you so much, John. And which makes me bring Eddie to the conversation. Eddie Ashoya, good evening.
Leon,
How are
hi,
you? Good evening.
good evening.
Thank you so much for joining us. For those who don't know, Eddie Ashoya is our columnist at Nation Media Group. He writes a column every week known as Man Talk. So men really talk to him. They might not want to talk to psychologists like Akina, Rachel, and Edna, but they talk to Eddie, interestingly. So, Eddie, what do men tell you? How are they navigating their current marriages? Because I was reading you last week and you are saying the best place for a man to get a wife is in the village. Please tell us, because you also have spoken about this issue on mental health, especially in men in marriages keeping silent. How do we break this silence?
Leon, you're putting me in dangerous spots. Now, which question do I start with? You've asked so many. Which one is more
Yeah,
important to you?
start with how men are navigating the marriages. What are they telling you that they're
So,
telling wives and
okay.
girlfriends?
Okay. In the spirit of full disclosure, I'm not married, but from the inboxes that I get, well, it's a mixed bag, because there are people, as is with life, there are people who are for, and there are mostly those who are against. So I do have some guys who tell me, you know, it has changed for them, especially as they grow older. They tend to realize that they get very lonely. And even last week when I was writing about my friend getting married, I had based it on that, because most men are rather prefer being alone. And as men grow older, they cut off themselves from society, and the friends that they had, right? Say, Leon, you're my friend. If maybe say we live till 70, I'm more likely to keep you as a friend till 70. And even if you fall off, I'm not going to bring in another friend to replace what you are in my life. So there's that loneliness, especially because, so the guy that I was talking to was telling me, there are things that you can only share with your boys. I know there are those people who are for, your wife is your best friend, is your partner, you can tell her everything. But there are things that you want a good laugh with a fellow man, you want to talk the way you want to talk with a fellow man, and you can't do that in marriage, because there are all these parameters, there are all these things that you discuss with your wife, that he feels a certain spot in your life. Now, when it comes to especially mental health, and most men, I think there's been an uptick of people going to therapy, which is nice, especially considering if you grew up in the typical African home where silence was the mode of therapy, or hiding things under the carpet. But for me, I've noticed that there's that increase, especially with people talking, and it's about you. I don't want to use the common buzzwords that are used by psychologists, like safe spaces and whatnot, because sometimes you're not looking for a safe space. You just want to talk it out. You want to go to a bar, or just to have lunch and to talk to a friend and just say the things that are in your mind. And more often than not, that is what most men lack. Because like I said, these issues led into each other. So if you are lonely even before marriage will only excavate it and make it deeper. That's from the people who inbox me. There are those also who say marriages and whatnot, but more often than not, there are those who tell me, "Kijana, do not get married." But you know, there's always, it's easier to sell hard things than to make other people buy it. You know.
Thank you so much, Eddie. Please do stick around. I quickly wish to go back to Edna. Edna, what is your reaction to what Eddie has just told us from a professional point of view?
It's interesting. I hope, Eddie, thank you so much for sharing those insights. I do believe, I agree that people, there are those who favor marriages, there are those who don't for varied reasons. Now, there's something very significant that has been mentioned that I'd like to build on. If you are lonely before marriage, your marriage won't make you less lonely. Chances are it might actually increase the loneliness depending on how well you navigate your own. I usually say the hardest person to rein in is yourself. Let me then just move on with that. I usually say life is what you make it. Life is what you make it. Now, for some people, marriage works because there are steps they have made or choices they have made that, and then they found a partner who understood where they were coming from, and as a result, it makes the marriage work. Because I think of marriage like a bed, a 6x6 bed. It's very hard to carry a 6x6 bed alone. But if you have a partner who understands where you're coming from, then they're able to lift their side as you lift your side. Then you're able to make something good out of that particular marriage. In fact, I feel marriages end when two people stop agreeing. That's when marriages end. That's not to mean you have to agree on everything. It means for as long as you can accommodate each other and listen to each other and be empathetic with each other and understand each other, then they can work. But the moment you begin to see each other as enemies, you're suspicious about where each of you is coming from and stuff like that, then it turns into something else altogether. Now, we don't set into a marriage with the intention of it becoming a bad thing in most cases. So why then do we end up finding ourselves in an adverse environment within our marriages? Possibly it's because of the kind of lives that we have led, the kind of childhood we had, the role models in our lives, the support systems or structures we have, our own mental health state, how self-aware we are. All those are possible contributing factors to how well we navigate. And I don't even think I've mentioned all of them. I've just tried to pick a few things here and there. So I say one of the things that if what do men talk about in regard to marriage, well, they'll say many things, and the same applies to women. They'll say many things, but everyone's frame of reference is theirs because of their experiences, the experiences they're going. So we cannot take one person's frame of reference and generalize it as all of us. We cannot say, and I'm glad at least Eddie, even despite all the negative and positive he may receive, is also present to that, and he shared the same. People's experiences are different and vary from one person to the next. I think that was a question, Leonard. You didn't ask about the mental health one.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Now, just stick around us still. I want to know about something that Rachel mentioned, though she'll react to it later again. And I just remembered earlier this year around May, I did a story whereby the Kenya Medical Research Institute had done this study in Mombasa and Kilifi counties. And they had told us that most Kenyans over there are increasingly associating suicide with superstition. And this explains why they are seeking help from traditional and religious leaders instead of going to mental health professional like you, Daktari. So why could this be happening? And what role does religion play when it comes to addressing mental health, especially from the local setting?
Okay. Thank you. I think also a very good question. Now, one of the things human beings need to cope is hope, isn't it? We use hope as an anchor to help us keep moving. The hope that this relationship will work, the hope that I will be better tomorrow. We go to work with the hope that we will make it one day. We will drive the car of our dreams. We'll build the homes of our dreams and things like that. Now, hope feeds our emotions, isn't it? Hope, it almost feels like an emotion, but it also feeds our emotions. The thing that is stirred up when our emotions are stirred up when somebody speaks a message that brings us a sense of hope, that our suffering will come to an end, that our pain will come to an end, that when this and this happens, things will come to an end. So without realizing, many of us have found ourselves plugging into spiritual spaces that we perceive as inspiring hope. And you see, the moment you're plugged in with hope, you will believe everything you're told, isn't it? In any case, for as long as somebody has shown you this thing works, you believe in everything that aligns with that. Now, I remember, yes, the incident in the coastal area that was in line with mass suicide, I think, and stuff like that. And people were very confused and wondering, how do you get to a place where you're so corrupted that somebody would get you to actually kill yourself in the name of following a faith? It's because they tagged on your heart and got you to anchor your hope in them. You know, the truth is, spirituality in the African setup is a really big deal, because everything we can't explain, we attribute to something spiritual, isn't it? So if I have been trying to do something and get myself out of a situation for years and I can't get myself out of that, we justify and say, you know what, this is a spiritual thing. If you think about even how we handle loss and grief, we attribute it to a spiritual thing. So sometimes we don't deal with the pain it triggers or the negative emotions it triggers because we are feeling, if I try to deal with that, it's like I am undermining God's hand in what I am doing or in what I am going through, you know. So that is one of the reasons why people would rather go the spiritual way than go than actually seek help for mental health issues, because they feel, I don't want to undermine my pastor, I don't want to undermine God. My pastor has given me hope, God has given me hope, my faith has given me hope, and therefore I don't want to undermine that. So as a result, I'd rather just go with that and ignore every other negative emotion I am feeling. Ignore the sense of doubt that's coming in, because remember, I'm supposed to have faith. So if something is said and I doubt whatever that message is, but it's going against the very essence of the faith I've subscribed to, then I will ignore what I am feeling and go with the faith. You're getting? So I think that's one of the things, unfortunately, that a few spiritual leaders may have tagged into to get people to follow them blindly. But I say this, there's a place for mental health, just like there's a place for spirituality. Even in therapy, you cannot lean on therapy 100% or psychological aspect 100%, because the idea of surrender is really powerful in helping people recover. When you're dealing with anxiety, what do we when I tell you focus on mindfulness and things like that, what am I doing? I'm encouraging you to surrender. I'm encouraging you to let go of the things you cannot control. And faith is a good place to anchor surrender, because you always feel like, you know what, if I can't do it, God can do it for me. So from where I sit, I think there's a place for both. I think we need to understand that there are pains we don't deal with by praying, and there are things we deal with by praying. And even mental health and addressing this in a psychological manner feeds into spirituality. It's not supposed to be against. It's not an either-or situation. Those two are supposed to work together to help us and help benefit everybody. I hope I have answered that, Lionel.
Yes, thank you very much. Allow me to go back to Rachel. Rachel, as
Yes.
as a scientist and a psychologist,
Yes.
parents, especially in families, mothers love their sons too much that they don't want to tell themselves, perhaps there's something wrong with my child. I can just take them to a church, to spiritual leaders, to see 1, 2, 3 pastors, and all will be well. What are the dangers of doing that?
So thank you, Leon. I wouldn't really say that parenting is really to blame, but I think as days have gone by, parenting definitely has changed, because we have parents who are more self-aware than maybe a long time ago, or maybe we have parents who understand mental health than they did back then. So I do not think that we have parents who are really babying their kids and cushioning them from the dangers of life or from reality per se. I think we have parents who have tried to express their love to their children and give them the love that they wanted, but maybe were not able to receive it. So sometimes it can appear as that, but I do not think there is love that is excessive. I do not think so. I think that everything has its place. As Edna has said, everything has its place. It's not like if you love somebody, you're loving them excessively. You know, in African culture, we say that huyo umempenda tu sana, that's why ana behave like this and like that. I do not think that is right. I do not think there is love that is excessive. There is that there are toxic situations, yes, and toxic relationships even between children and their parents, yes, but love is not excessive. As long as you love somebody, we cannot really we cannot give it a negative connotation in that case. So when we look at parenting again, these parents that we're talking about are human beings at the end of the day. They are dealing with lots of emotional pain. They're dealing with economic hardship. They're dealing with a lot of things. And at the end of the day, they have to come and point to somebody else. So as long as the parent is not okay, and this could be because of factors that they have no control over, or maybe factors that they could control, either could be the case. But as long as the parent is not okay, the child will always not be okay. In most cases, you will always find that when you find that a child is really in a mentally disturbed state, or in a mental state that is not maybe all right, you find that it also goes down to the community that they have around them, you know. So it is important, even as parents, to help children from a very young age to build community. Because even when we look at the question that you had asked earlier about men and mental health, one of the things that makes mental health a very difficult issue for men basically is because most men do not have community. And you might be married, yes, but then again, like we said, you might be very lonely in that marriage because you lack community. So even as we bring up kids and we have younger brothers and sisters that we keep mentoring every other day, it is important for us to teach them the importance of community so that they do not feel like this individualistic culture that we're trying to create, it just creates a pandemic of loneliness left, right, and center. So you find that even as we parent, we also need to understand, where does community come in? How do we teach our children how to also have community so that they can be able to accept other people, learn about forgiveness, be able to interact, be able to open up, and then that way they do not always have to rely on us solely for everything emotionally in this case, so they can be able to also have a healthy relationship with their peers, with people older than them, younger than them. In that way, it becomes easier for them to open up and have a sense of community, and then they're also able to grow mentally. I don't know whether I have answered your question, Leon.
Very much. Thank you so much. Now, John. John, are you with us? Remember, as I bring in John, I will now love to take your questions in case you
Yes,
have
I
a
am.
question. Remember, you check down below your right hand side. There's a heart-shaped icon there. If you click on it, there's an emoji for raising up your hand. You can just raise your hand up, and I'll give you the mic, or you can just request for the mic, and I'll give you a chance to speak and ask your question to the experts. Now, John, I want to know, Rachel is talking about community. And if you go to my rural village and you tell people about mental health, they look at you as though you're talking of something that has come from the moon. They don't quite understand it. Even those who are older than us who are there, they know something might be happening to someone, but they can't just connect it to mental health. How do we democratize our services so that these services reach mashinani? Is my first question. And my second question will be, how do we narrow data gap and help narrow costs, increase access, and improve impact of mental wellness so that it does not become an issue of, if you want access to treatment, you have to be around town. How do we get to mashinani? I think John has fled. John, I think your network. Meanwhile, I've seen Grace from formerly. John, are you back? Hello, John. Are you back? John, are you back? John, are you back? Please take the mic, John. Meanwhile, as we wait for John to arrange himself, Perhaps, Edna, you can help us and just share your thoughts.
How do we get
Yes.
help the people
How
in
do we
mashinani?
Yes.
Democratize health. Very good question. I think it would be by riding on the availables. That's how I do it. Because I'm imagining someone age, the most ideally possibly equipped pastors or the social workers in those spaces, the community workers within those spaces with the rights so that they can be offered, especially fasting. And I know that people have been different organ looked at with just to see how they at least offer psychological fasting, even if it's not full-fledged therapy, then create awareness in those spaces. But then to create awareness, then even the influencers in those spaces then have to buy in or understand what, so that we are not, one of the things that works against us is when we make the possible support structures in our communities fight against each other, like spirituality and mental health against each other. That doesn't work in our favor. If there's a way, or even general health work, physical health work, and mental health work at crossroads with each other does not favor the community. So if I was to think of ways to democratize, I require a level of our machine. And then the other thing that would work is riding availables, whether it is center, whether it is a church, whether it is a mosque, whether it is a whatever platform there is that brings the community together. Those are platforms we can use. But then to do that, we need someone. This is where now political leaders would then play a very role. Because if you have a political invested mental health or who understands our needs around the mental, then they also create the opportunity or possibly even support those kind of opportunities. Because I know it's not easy for somebody to just leave Nairobi to go create awareness in a place in the village around mental health and earn nothing. There would be a problem. So we may need as such to be able to penetrate and enable everybody get to wellness. The other thing that would work is even for those of us who are exposed, beginning to have our family. In fact, all of us should be champions at some point, or even advocates of sorts. For those of us who may have interacted with and have an understanding of health, instead of letting someone be locked up in a doghouse behind the house because they have abnormal behavior, why not begin to have a conversation about why don't we take this person to this hospital? Because even the hospitals are a good resource within our mashinani. Why don't we take this person to hospital? And I know in most hospitals right now, especially level 5 hospitals, psychiatrist hospitals, they are equipping themselves with counselors and all that, but they do have social workers who sometimes are trained in, so they may know. So I think those are resources that we within the village to help us ensure that the help is as possible. Then for those of us who are here, who have the opportunity, honestly speaking, I feel we should be a sponge. When we have these talks, when you have a talk within your office spaces, plug in, get to know, because knowledge is, you can empower another person to know something, That's how I would think of it. I think we are all tools that can be very useful in the journey of prioritizing mental health. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Now, over to you, Grace. Grace, good evening.
Hi, Leon. Good evening. How are you doing? Hi,
And
everyone.
I want to give you half a second to introduce yourself because I believe as someone who used to work at the Ministry of Health, you are very well equipped to answer these questions, to defend your own record and tell us what you are doing there. Yeah, please tell us.
Okay. So, my name is Grace Nyambura. I am a psychologist by profession. I used to work at Quality Rights under the Ministry of Health, advocating for rights of persons with disabilities, and in this case, intellectual, cognitive, and psychosocial disabilities. Basically, that is what we call mental illnesses in biomedical terms. So yes, that is what I have been doing for a long time. I recently moved to Girls for Girls in Mombasa, where I now deal with community mental health, adolescent and supporting survivors of GBV, and also caregivers of persons with disabilities and caregivers of persons who have survived gender-based violence. So that is me in short.
Thank you so much. Now, Grace, how do we democratize these services to make sure they fika mashinani? Because I saw you when in the last government, all you guys were busy launching, the way forward, the roadmaps. MOH was always launching things every week. But to date, hizo vitu hazijafika mashinani. How do we democratize health? What are we not doing, and where are the gaps?
So there was a task force in 2019 where we have come from. There
Yes.
was a task force in 2019 that went around the country to sort of collect information from professionals. By professionals, the mental health field is rather wide. So we have different stakeholders that includes psychiatrists, we have psychologists, we have counselors, we have social workers, literally everybody, even the corporate and the community spaces. So the task force went around and collected information on what is the society lacking, what is the Kenyan community lacking, and why at that time there was really high rates of suicide, which have continuously increased anyway. So the task force went around collecting information on why are we having high cases of suicide? What is it? Why is there like a lot of people complaining about mental illnesses, mental health? What are we not doing right? And there was a lot of issues that came up. That I will not maybe sort of cover it all because it is a really huge document that I will sort of recommend that please go and look out for the mental health task force report. It is a really big document. But one of the things that came up was the community mental health. The fact that a lot of professionals have been working in facilities, and by facilities I mean medical facilities. I'm talking about hospitals. So a lot of psychologists, a lot of psychiatrists, a lot of counselors, like basically mental health was around that. And so that had sort of formed a stigma that whenever someone has a mental illness, the only kind of help they can get is medical. But I love that when the task force went around, it also came up with the knowledge that psychosocial support is really important for persons who are battling mental illness. Of course, there's the fact that they need medication, there's the fact that they need treatment, but that is not the only kind of treatment they need. That is not the only kind of, approach they need to recover. So the only way to sort of help people who are battling mental illnesses, and mental illnesses go way, they're really wide. I mean, we have mood disorders, things like depression, we have things like schizophrenia, and all these things portray or rather come out and manifest in different dimensions. So you'll realize that someone may be, there's a lot of mood fluctuations, there's a lot of maybe fighting, violence. So just realizing that these mental issues that we talk about manifest in different ways. And
Hello, Grace. Can you hear us?
hello, yes, I can hear you.
Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Hello, Leon.
Yes, please go. Yes.
Oh,
Please go on.
sorry, I thought you muted me. Just said muted by the host. Okay, anyway, so let me just proceed. So I was talking about the approach that everyone sort of gets in the community is usually different. And this is why we really need people who are on the ground. And by people who are on the ground, I mean community services. So that you don't have to go to a level 4 hospital, a level 5 hospital. Trust me, we have less than 500 certified psychiatrists in this country, Kenya. And a lot of those psychiatrists are working in private institutions. Of course, there's now the level 5 hospitals, the government hospitals, but you realize there's also not as many level 5 hospitals in Kenya. So there's an issue with access to mental health support, because yes, there's the psychiatric approach, but even the psychologists, where are the psychologists? And that is where you saw the government coming up with a psychologist board. That is where you see the KCPA, the licensing boards, because yes, there has been psychologists, yes, there have been people who are trained on, providing mental health care, but how do we license these people? How do we ensure that the quality of the service that is reaching the person in the community is also of high, and it's also of high quality? Because again, anyone can just wake up and decide I am a mental health advocate. We have seen people pushing agendas even on Twitter. I mean, we see these agendas every day. Someone just wakes up and says I'm a mental health advocate, but the kind of information, the kind of agendas they're pushing are not really benefiting that person with a mental health illness. That person who is battling, well, may not have a mental health illness, but may be battling their own mental health. So you realize that the fact that the task force came to the realization that the country needs professionals. It needs people who are able to address issues. And I love that there has been training for psychologists, there has been training for counselors, even the CHAP, the COVID response. The COVID response also took a lot of psychologists into the ministry and into other hospitals, level 3, level 4, level 5 kind of facilities, so that you don't have to travel all the way. There was a time when the only facility you would seek mental health support from was Mathare, but right now you don't need to go to Mathare. And then another thing that I love that the former government did, in all regards to His Excellency President Kenyatta, or former President Kenyatta, whatever. All regards to him was he made Mathare a semi-autonomous government authority. And this is to mean that it is a saga now. This is an independent facility. This is now a facility that does not only deal with mental issues, but also can accommodate other kind of physical support so that we don't stigmatize. You see, there's a time ulikuwa unasema, I'm going to Mathare, and everyone is looking at you like, are you mad? You know, and I love that kind of making Mathare a saga really helped destigmatize it so that people know you don't only have to be mad to go to Mathare. You can literally go and get assessed. You can go and maybe see a counselor. You can go and see if you're dealing with addiction. There's addiction counselors. There's like you can get all kind of support from that space. So I love that we have made so many strides in all regards to the Ministry of Health. The Director of Mental Health, his name is Dr. Simon Njuguna. He's a psychiatrist who is really passionate about mental health and also psychosocial support. Because again, we need to come out from the fact and from the thinking that mental health is only medical, and come to think of mental health as more of psychosocial and more of a human right. Because everyone has a right to health. That is even stipulated in the Constitution. It's stipulated in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It's there in the UNCRPD. The UNCRPD is the United Nations Conventions on Rights of Persons with Disabilities. A lot of people with disabilities, or rather with mental disabilities, have gone through a lot of stigmatization, a lot of dehumanizing kind of treatment, and that now has also, propagated these kinds of stigma that, when you have a mental illness, you can be institutionalized, you can be held in a facility against your will, you're not able to make a decision on where you want to live. And these are things that people really struggle with, even in family levels, because they're not even included. They're not, the idea is you are mad. As long as you have a mental illness, whether it is anxiety, whether it is depression, whatever kind of illness, people are really stigmatized, and people are battling these things. They just need this kind of help. They need the support. They need to know that as much as I am battling anxiety, it is not my identity. I am human first. I am human before my anxiety. I am human before my depression. I am human before my whatever it is that they're battling. So yes, thank you, Leon.
Thank you so much, Grace. Now, I had a question for the experts. I would love to know how Rachel and Edna will respond to this before Grace gives us her view on the same. Now, my colleague Bridget Ngana from NTV, she's asking, can we start by talking about how death by suicide is not even qualified as a medical death in Kenya? What is your reaction to that? Let's start with you, Rachel.
Hey, so I think that is a very sad reality, because when you look at, I know this is a very sensitive topic, but allow me. So when you look at somebody who's going through the whole process of, the mental instability until they get to a point where they commit suicide, this is somebody who is sick. So denying them access to any medical care, and barring them from accessing medical insurance as a result of discriminating the disease that they have, then it becomes a problem, because insurance does not, most insurance, I do not even know whether there's any insurance that covers that. I mean, people from Minet should tell us, unless there's new ones that have come up. So this is very, it really stigmatizes the family and also the loved one that the family has lost, because it puts it in a very different category. It's like you wanted to do it, you did it, so it's your problem. It really decenters it from what it really is. So I think that it is very important that policy tries, people who are in policy, that they try to incorporate this. I do not know whether there's any push towards it, to be included, because you find that even most companies do not cover therapy and all of those things. But if you break a leg, insurance will cover. If you break a hand, insurance will cover. But when you're mentally ill, people will look at you and say, cheer up, you know. So nobody thinks that there is need to actually assist you medically. You know, I have not seen fundraisers of people who require medical assistance because of how it's frowned upon. It's, you know, it's looked at it's like something you have inflicted upon yourself. It's not looked at something that befalls you or that has happened over time. Because if somebody has requires maybe some treatment for a disease like, let's say, cancer, you're going to see WhatsApp groups of people who want to assist. You will see people coming from left, right, and center coming together to try and assist this person to seek medical help. Now, how many have we seen on people who have mental illness or people who require some mental health assistance? Very few. So even as we talk about mental health down here, I think it is also important for us to look at the avenues to push this so that this can also be included in policy so that people do not suffer, because mental health in itself is a very, you know, it's a very broad topic, and it's also a very expensive issue, because for people who are psychologists or who've seen therapists, it's expensive. I mean, we have several centers where you can get it, maybe at a better price, maybe at Kenyatta and all of these other public areas. But how many can make it there? How many people from Meru, Kondani will be able to make it to these places? How many companies cover mental health? Very few. So I think it is very important for us to look at suicide from a very different angle. I think it is important for us to also look at the preventive action, not just somebody wanted to commit suicide, now we want to rush and assist them. But how do we prevent? How do we identify people at risk so that we do not wait until it is a very horrible situation for us to now want to assist these people? And even as we talk about policy, as people in community, how do we create a protective environment for our families, for our brothers and sisters, for our colleagues? What kind of cultures do we create around us so that we also cushion people from things like suicide? Because, you know, suicide is as a result of pain, loneliness, you know, all of these things. So if we also if we play our small part in assisting other people, even as we say that it is important for us to create a community, it is also important for us to promote a lot of healthy connections, to also teach people coping skills, problem solving skills, so that people are also able to, you know, not wait until that point where they get and they feel so hopeless and nothing else can work in this world, you know. So it is important for us to also not create a very individualistic culture, because eventually just creates individualistic suffering. So as we try to navigate suicide, because I mean it's something that is not that much talked about, it is also important for us to ask ourselves, what part do we play as people in a community? What part are you supposed to play? Thank you, Leon.
Thank you so much. I wish to close, and as I wind up, I'm just giving half a second for each expert to give us their closing remark. Let's start with Edna.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. There's a tagline I like using. I know Lucky Dube sang and said, "We are born to suffer." Honestly, when I think about
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I like reminding people that we are not born to suffer. Suffering is something you can navigate our way around, regain control, and steer our lives in the direction that we want. There is no shame in asking for help. By the way, I know our communities, society may be structured in the kind of way that asking for help is something shameful or a sign of weakness. But then if we are to move forward and to regain control of our lives and even win this silent battle to reclaim our mental health, then we have to be willing to ask for help. Because without help, then we never really know when we fall short and we struggle. We take too long to move. And unfortunately, sometimes as we take too long to make progress, to navigate, we end up losing lives, you know. So as much as possible, I'd say none of us is born to suffer. True, stress and suffering may be part of life. We may experience some level of suffering as we go through certain experiences in life. Please seek help as soon as you can. Reach out to somebody who can journey with you, somebody to talk to, somebody to be there for you. Do not live your life alone. Do not live your life alone, because social support is a big protective factor for mental health issues. Get one person you can talk to. And if you don't trust anybody, guess what? Find a professional you can talk to. Deal with the pain that you're dealing with and get to a better place. You're not born to suffer. You're born to live a good and healthy and happy life. You don't have to turn against yourself. It's okay to reach out for help, hold someone else's hand, and make something good out of your life. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much. Let's move to Grace. Just have a second because tunataka kwenda kupika ugali tafadhali.
So my tagline would be, just because you're going through something, it does not mean you have to go through it alone. It does not mean that you have to battle your thoughts on your own. You can get help. You can talk to someone that will help you, and it's okay. And I need to insist on this. If you're not able to afford therapy, get a psychologist or maybe a counselor who will be willing to support you pro bono, because that way you know your confidentiality is highly assured. Now, because we've had cases of people saying I can't open up because every time people just wanaandikana tu huku kwa Twitter. But I think once you have an NDA, once you have a consent form for therapy, and you've signed an NDA, whatever you tell a counselor, a psychologist, a therapist, no one will ever come to know, unless it is something that is risky. Perhaps you've threatened your own life or you're threatening someone else's life. Of course, that is something that even whoever is offering you therapy will have to report. Yes, so it is gonna be well. Just because you're struggling does not mean you have to struggle alone. Seek help, talk to someone, go out, develop coping mechanisms. And maybe I should touch on the coping mechanisms. There's exercise, there's eating healthy, there's sleeping, get enough sleep, drink enough water, talk to someone. Again, talking is also a coping mechanism. And yes, learn whatever works for you. If it is music, just learn to cope with the situations, to stress manage, or rather to manage stress. And then, yeah, everything gets better with time.
Thank you very much. Rachel?
Hi, so I'd like to say that some of the things that will help us navigate through the world that we are living in today is ensuring that we have spaces where we can be vulnerable, again, community. So having spaces where we can actually let ourselves be, investing in relationships where we can actually, turn to people, talk to them, tell them this is what is going on in our lives, so that at least they can offer a listening ear, even if they do not automatically solve all our problems. It is also important for us to create rest for people. Let people around you not feel like they have to work hard for your love, for your grace. Give people grace. Let people, even little kids alike, let them have some rest in you, such that everybody does not feel like they have to, work for a relationship with you. Sometimes it is good to create a space for people around us, and also support people who are trying to be better. So I wish everyone a lovely evening, and I'm happy to be here. And thank you to everyone. Leon, back to you.
Thank you so much. Eddie? And then we go to Joy.
Oh, even me was speaking. But yeah, as I don't want to repeat whatever has been said. Thank you to everyone who's been here. Thank you to you, to Leon, as well, for being a good host, to Minet for giving the platform. As my esteemed panelists have said, always speak up. There's always a friend. Always look for a friend. That will be my message to all the men, especially men.
So much. Let's go to Joy. Joy.
Thank you,
Joy.
Leon.
For you,
Yeah.
I want you to tell us if Minet has anything special they're offering us for mental health, especially for those of us who cannot afford.
I'm not able to do that at the moment, but you can always reach out to us on any of our pages, and we'll be able to
Yeah.
advise you and to take you through that journey.
Okay, I think most insurance companies have mental health covers, which makes it even more affordable. So please, do not worry or stress yourself. Once you have insurance covers, you can really get to be helped. I don't know if Damaris is on call. Damaris, are you on call? Because I've tried looking for your account, I haven't seen it. There's a lady called Damaris from Minet. I think she's not with us. Lady
Can
Waithera
you?
was asking if yes.
It's okay if she's not
Damaris,
in. You can take the
okay,
question. It's Esther.
okay. Save the day once again. Thank you. May God bless you for us.
Oh,
So there is a lady Waithera. She's asking, let us know of insurance companies that cover mental health. Can you help us with that kindly?
so definitely we are one of them, or rather we can help you secure solutions such as this one. More often than not, as you're looking for an insurance partner, when you're scouting for a solution that covers you holistically, you know there are a number of factors that you have to keep in mind, maybe in terms of band limits, the number of people you wish to co-opt into your solution. So the costings usually vary based on the needs of the person. Definitely, if you want the mental health aspect of it to be covered in it, it can also be costed for. But here, as Minet, with the corporate covers, we do have, we're able to negotiate some of these packages as value adds. You gain access to our EAP services, our counselors. So it just depends on which level of coverage you're looking for and the types of specialists that you'll want to have in your insurance package. Yes, I'll speak on behalf of Minet.
Oh, thank you so much. May God bless you. And thank you, everyone. Just keep on the watch out and follow Minet on all social media platforms. And you can always leave any comments on any issues you have at the media on their social media pages, because they have a very robust team that's always on call 24/7 in case you need help. Otherwise, thank you so much. See you soon. And may God bless you all. Thank you. Have a blessed evening.
Good night, everyone. See you next time. Bye.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.